Canon invited me and some other media members to check out their new full frame camera, the R8. And I'm not gonna lie, I was looking and waiting for the Canon cripple hammer to strike, but it never showed up. Yep, Canon really just dropped a $1,500 full frame camera that can shoot 40 frames per second stills and can shoot uncropped, oversampled 4K 60, 10-bit video. Damn. So according to Canon, the new Canon R8 is gonna be a replacement of the Canon EOS R in the mirrorless lineup. And even although it has the same body style as the Canon RP, same little battery as the RP, with some of the dials changed out to kind of mimic the R6 Mark II, it is not a replacement of the Canon RP. So there's gonna be a lot of confusion about that, but this is how they presented it. This is one of the few times where I actually genuinely got excited about a budget-friendly camera, a camera that's $1,500. And part of the reason is because the Canon R8 shares a lot of the internals and capabilities of what the R6 Mark II has and can do. So looking under the hood of the Canon R8, you got the same 24.2 megapixel CMOS sensor, okay? And this is not a sensor that's trickled down from a couple years ago. This is a pretty much brand new sensor that was made for the R6 Mark II late last year. You're getting beautiful image quality and pretty good readout speed, considering that it's not a stacked sensor.
My man's a natural.
Man, these are fire. Do that one again. The last one, we're looking off to the side. Yeah. You're getting the same Digic X processor. And that's really important because the R8 can also shoot 40 frames per second like the R6 Mark II can in full electronic shutter. Using the electronic first curtain, you only get 6 frames per second. And now this is one of the drawbacks of this camera, one of the things that kind of got me like, oh, that kind of hurts. It does not have a mechanical shutter. To some people, this may not matter, but to portrait and wedding photographers that shoot with off-camera flash, this could be an issue, okay? Because in my experience using electronic first curtain shutter, when I start to exceed the flash sync speed of the camera, you're gonna most likely introduce banding, and those lines in the image, it's a hit or miss, but most of the time I do get that banding. Also, if you want to give your images that golden hour look like I did here, check out my golden hour Lightroom preset pack. These are the presets that I personally use to give my images some rich, warm tones. What about the autofocus? I mean, there's no way that Canon would put the same sensor and autofocus system of a camera that's $1,000 more into the R8, right? Wrong. They did a lot of trickling in this little strategy, okay? This camera has the same autofocus system as the R6 Mark II, which is freaking phenomenal. You got the same subject detection that recognizes people, animals, vehicles. And when it comes down to just detecting subjects in auto, in full auto, leave this camera in auto, and it can detect subjects and lock onto them better and faster than some flagship cameras out here. I'm not even lying. It's that good. I would not hesitate leaving this camera in auto and just pointing it at something, right? I'm talking about the R8. I could just point it at something and it will just recognize what it is and it will just do its job. It's phenomenal. For $1,500 to have this kind of image quality and autofocus it does not make sense. It's such a good value. Canon's also introducing a new autofocus feature. It's called subject to detect feature. So basically you're able to scroll through the different subjects in your frame. So let's say you have 3 people in front of you, 3 people in the picture. You can just, with your thumb, tap the screen like this, just tap the screen. And what it's gonna do, it's gonna go ahead and toggle through every person in the frame. So you can choose really quickly which one you want to pick. So instead of individually picking a focusing point, switching modes, picking a point, moving the autofocusing point, you can just go ahead and just tap the back of the screen and it'll toggle. I love the way Canon implemented it into the R8, and in rare form, this feature is probably gonna trickle up into the higher tier cameras. It's pretty cool that they put it in one of their lower tier cameras. Sony also has a very similar feature to this where you can click down on the joystick and it'll go ahead and now you can toggle through the different faces in the frame. And this is a $4,000 camera. Looking at the ergonomics of the Canon R8, this is where the price starts to make a little sense, okay? And also kind of confusing. So the R8 has the same body style or the same camera body as the Canon RP. The things that were changed are for the good. So the on and off switch was on this side before, and now it has the same photo video switch that's on the R6 Mark II, which is a good thing. And it also has the same style of on and off switch that's on the R6 Mark II on the right top side. And just like the original RP, the R8 does not have Ibis. The R8 has a small little battery, and the R8 also has one card slot. It also shares the same mic and headphone jack, and to no one's surprise, micro HDMI port as well. Now it's starting to come to me a little bit. The price is starting to become a little bit more justified with the lack of these three things. But to be fair, the lack of Ibis is not that big a deal. Most Canon lenses have Ibis already in it. It would be the battery and the one memory card slot that could pose that potential deal breaker. But this camera's already punching so above its weight class that I could see myself overlooking these things for a camera like this at $1,500. So now what about for video? Now, remember, all the things that this camera has for photography and for autofocus, and on the video side, just like the R6 Mark II, it shoots 4K 60, no crop. This is 6K oversampled 4K 60 with no crop, up to 10-bit with C-Log 3. Now, knowing Canon's strategy for the past couple of years, I would have assumed that they would have made it a 4K 60 crop, right? Somehow cripple it because it's already such a good little photo camera. It's surprising to me that they didn't cripple it at all. It's full readout. So you can shoot 4K 60 up to 30 minutes and 4K 30 or 24, I believe, for like 2 hours. You know, it wasn't hot in Charleston. It was in the 60s. But my boy Ryan was filming me in 4K 60. Everything was in 4K 60. There was no overheating signs. From what I know, no one else experienced anything like that. That's pretty impressive, even on a small body. So that's just, again, I'm assuming no one ever talked about it. No one discussed it. Looking at the video package for a $1,500 camera, I think that this is a really solid offering. One more thing about the Canon R8 that I have to talk about, and it's kind of confirming some of my predictions of cameras moving forward. At the end of the press briefing, Canon talked about the Canon R8 and even the Canon R50 having some computational photography tricks up its sleeve, similar to what a smartphone can do. Now, for example, it only works in A mode, automatic, with the green one, so it's A+ mode, okay? So when you're taking a photo, and if the camera determines there's an issue with the scene, so let's say you're shooting with a shutter speed of 1/30, 1/40th of a second, or the camera determines that's the lowest it can go because it's already compensating with the ISO, whatever the case is, there's gonna be a little red indicator flashing like, hey, there's a problem in this scene here. But if you take the photo, well, from my understanding, from how Canon explained it, what's happening is the camera will bracket, or the camera will stack multiple pictures together and stitch one together that is the best possible outcome. So they were reluctant to call it computational. I understand why, but I think this is an introduction to bigger things to come in the future. And that was always my prediction, because these smartphones with these tiny little sensors, they can somehow compete with these bigger cameras when the lighting scenario is, when you have really good lighting. Sometimes you're not gonna be able to tell the difference. That's why they make a bunch of videos comparing the newest iPhone with cameras when iPhone season is here. And a lot of the times in good lighting, you can't tell the difference, right? So they're taking some of that technology, they're taking some of those features from smartphones and bringing them to the cameras. They didn't put too much emphasis on this, so because I didn't get to test it, I don't know how good it actually is. I'll probably be checking out Chris and Jordan, DP Review, and Jared to see if they tested it. I tried to use it, but I realized that I was in RAW and JPEG when I was doing that. And from my understanding, this only works in JPEG, right? So think about a beginner picking up a camera. They're not gonna change to RAW or JPEG. They're just shooting the camera the way it is right out of the box. That's how it works. And so for things to come, just imagine this feature working with, like, let's say portrait bokeh, right? Where let's say you're outdoors shooting at f4 with a kit lens, and in the camera, it'll give you like this fake blur, kind of like how your phone does. Or you want to maximize dynamic range and it'll stack images really fast, just kind of like how a phone does. and it'll spit out an image with more dynamic range. I don't know. These are things that I could see happening in the future with these cameras. But looking at the Canon R8 altogether and what it offers, I don't think there's nothing, well, I mean, there's nothing else at $1,500 that can compete with what this camera has to offer. You have the photo specs, almost the whole photo bundle, right? Of the Canon R6 Mark II, which is $2,500. With the autofocus, with the image quality, all the things, sensor, and then you have video, 4K 60 uncropped, oversampled from 6K. I mean, it just, you know, I know it doesn't have Ibis, but it does have electronic stable, and most Canon lenses have Ibis. Tell me what camera can compete with this camera at $1,500. This is like what the A7 III was a couple years ago at $2,000. That was like the gold standard for like hybrid camera at 2000. This is now like the gold standard for a more entry level camera at $1,500 and for what it offers. Hopefully Canon will send me out a unit so that I could further use, because I think that this camera is going to sell like hotcakes, because what I've realized in the comment section of a lot of videos, a lot of people out there have the Canon RP still because it just works for them. I think this is going to be a hot camera. So we'll be using it more in the future on this channel. All right. So I will check you out soon. Or maybe you'll be checking me out because I can't see you. I thought I had my outro locked in smooth, and I just messed it up.